In the murderous mountains of Afghanistan, SEALs are rushing to the front line for support. But I never expected that. It turns out that just one day ago, the US military intelligence agency received top-secret information that Taliban senior commander Ahmed was very likely to appear in a village in northern Afghanistan. As the #1 target of the US military, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to behead someone. The SEALs took off from Bagram Air Force Base in a helicopter. Under the cover of Apache, a 4-person team took advantage of the darkness to perform a reconnaissance mission near the village. Once Ahmed's whereabouts are confirmed, the headquarters will deploy air power to complete the airstrike. At the beginning of the mission, everything went smoothly. The reconnaissance team crossed the mountains and arrived at the predetermined location early the next morning. Captain Murphy held the observation scope and found Ahmed's figure as expected. But what was very troublesome was that a large number of Taliban armed forces were stationed in the village. Murphy immediately contacted the headquarters. Unexpectedly, due to the high mountains and dense forests, their communication was unexpectedly interrupted. The signal corps tried several times, still unable to recover. Because they were worried about the team being exposed, they left a sniper to monitor them, while the other 3 moved to the hillside to hide, looking for a suitable position. Something unexpected may happen any time. While everyone was resting, 3 shepherds drove their goats straight towards the hiding spot. Seeing that they were about to be discovered, the team attacked decisively, quickly controlled the shepherds, and found walkie-talkies from them. The shepherds didn't look like the Taliban, but they were worried that they might tip off information. At this time, the team faced 3 choices, either to release them and evacuate quickly, but there is a high possibility of being hunted, or to tie them in place and let them be eaten by wild wolves, or to kill them directly. Akers advocated killing them directly, but the conscripts firmly opposed it because there were 2 children among the shepherds. Once the matter was revealed, they would be infamy for forever. Captain Murphy thought about it and finally supported Marcus's opinion. They cut the handcuffs, freed the shepherds, and quickly headed to the top to try to restore communications and request an emergency evacuation. Murphy didn't expect that this decision would cost the US military an extremely heavy price. The freed boy ran back to the village to report the news. When the team arrived at the top of the mountain as planned, the satellite communication was still not restored. Everyone could only retreat to the woods and wait for the sun to set before returning to the base on foot. But this is Taliban territory, and they underestimated the enemy's strength. The Taliban guerrillas have been active in the mountains all year round. A team of more than 200 people quickly surrounded them. The team members knew that the odds were against them and they could only rely on their equipment advantages to fight. The 4 of them covered and retreated, trying to break out of the siege. Although the Taliban suffered heavy losses in the attack, they still relied on their numerical superiority to suppress the US military in the woods. Because the attack was difficult to succeed, the Taliban immediately deployed machine gun fire, and bullets rained down instantly. Faced with the Taliban's fearless attack, the team members gradually lost ground and were injured one after another. Murphy was seriously wounded in the abdomen and was in danger. Even though the 4 of them had extremely high military qualities, they were helpless. To make matters worse, the Taliban also carry rocket launchers, making the situation even more dangerous, and with the radio station destroyed, they were completely isolated and helpless. Seeing that the Taliban were about to rush over, but with an extremely steep hillside behind them, they had no choice but to take a desperate risk. Fortunately, all 4 of them survived, but before everyone could rest, the Taliban attacked again. The 4 men were exhausted and bruised, and had to move again to save their lives. Danny was unfortunately shot and fell to the ground on the way. Fortunately, Marcus gave a helping hand and Danny saved his life. The team was on a reconnaissance mission and therefore did not carry sufficient ammunition. In the fierce battle just now, several people had very little ammunition left. Marcus checked the injuries of his teammates and used soil to temporarily stop their bleeding. In order to survive, they must fight again. Murphy and Axe rolled down the hill one after another, but just as Marcus was carrying his teammates on his back, but was shot by Taliban soldiers. When the Taliban arrived later, Danny, who was seriously injured and on the verge of death, was shot in the head by the Taliban commander. The 3 people at the foot of the mountain didn't know that Danny had been killed, and tried to organize a counterattack and rescue. Axe's marksmanship was accurate, and he killed several people with snipers and covered them. Murphy and Marcus rushed forward, but the powerful firepower of the Taliban quickly extinguished the hopes of the three. As the commander of the team, Murphy realized that saving the lives of the remaining brothers was the key. He handed Marcus the bullet and told him never to give up the fight. Then he trudged to the hilltop 100 meters away, braving the Taliban's intensive firepower, and used a satellite phone to call for support. Murphy, who was completely exposed, was eventually shot to death. After receiving the distress message, the U.S. military base immediately dispatched a 16-member Special Forces team and quickly boarded 2 helicopters to provide support and rescue. However, the Apaches who were supposed to provide cover were moved away due to other firefights. As soon as the helicopter arrived at the war zone, it was immediately targeted by the Taliban on the ground. In order to avoid greater losses, the other aircraft could only evacuate hastily. Marcus, who originally saw hope, once again fell into despair, and the helicopters that easily killed the U.S. military greatly boosted the morale of the Taliban. Marcus and the two were subsequently separated by the enemy. Axe was cornered and trapped in the woods. He was shot several times and resisted desperately. After using up the last magazine, he was killed by a Taliban soldier with a headshot. Now only Marcus was left to live alone. Fortunately, he was very lucky. Even if he hid in a tight gap, he barely escaped the Taliban search. After an extremely long night, exhausted, he woke up from a deep sleep with suffocating pain from the wound on his leg. In yesterday's battle, his thigh was unfortunately penetrated by shrapnel, and his calf bone was broken into 2 pieces. He endured the severe pain, stuffed the exposed bones into his calf, and limped toward the base. After several hours of rugged mountain roads, when Marcus finally found a place of water, he happily jumped into the water and drank gulps of water, but did not notice the villagers behind him staring at him. Marcus panicked and took out a grenade to warn the other party not to get close. But the villagers didn't seem to have any ill intentions and actually offered him a helping hand. It turned out that the man was the nearby village chief. Taliban soldiers once broke into the village and beheaded innocent villagers in front of him. The whole village hated the Taliban. As the saying goes, the enemy of the enemy is a friend, so he took the risk to save Marcus. He wrote a handwritten letter asking for help and gave it to the village elders to send to the base. While waiting for rescue, the village chief not only provided him with water and food, but also assisted him with simple treatment of his wounds. But the next day, Taliban soldiers found blood nearby. They barbarically broke into the village and searched from house to house. Marcus was unarmed and was quickly dragged to the square and beaten. Not only that, the Taliban also planned to chop off his head. At the critical moment, the village chief couldn't bear this and decisively picked up his weapon and fired. The Taliban soldiers warned the village chief that they would bring people to massacre the entire village, but they did not expect that the village chief showed no fear and finally forcibly saved Marcus' life. The letterman worked day and night and finally delivered the letter for help to the U.S. military base. The U.S. military immediately dispatched all available forces and rushed to the village to carry out rescue. At the same time that the U.S. military set off, the Taliban, under the command of Ahmed, had surrounded the village, and the conflict between the two sides was about to break out. Under the fierce attack of the Taliban, the villagers who lacked heavy firepower suffered heavy losses. Seeing that the defense line was about to be breached, the village chief could only quickly move Marcus with him to delay as much time as possible. Under the cover of the village chief, the Taliban leader who attempted a sneak attack was killed, and the little boy also provided timely assistance to help Marcus deal with the enemy. At this time, the fighting outside was extremely fierce and the defense line had been breached. Just as the Taliban was about to massacre the village, the U.S. military rescue team finally arrived in the sky. The seriously injured Marcus was finally rescued. He wanted to take the injured village chief away, but he was refused by the rescue team, and the village that sacrificed a lot was not protected. The movie is adapted from a true story. Operation Red Wings was the most failed operation of the U.S. military. The action plan was full of loopholes, poor mounting communications, severe resource guarantees, and the extremely inflated self-confidence of the U.S. military, which led to the death of 19 people during the operation. Killed in action.